Good evening, beautiful people. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Mallory Plunkett. I am 8 years old. I am almost 9. My grandma is Raphael H. Plunkett. I volunteer with CJEC. My brother, sister, and I will be reading chapter 32 along with my grandmother. Welcome to our live weekly YouTube readings of the final report of the California Reparations Task Force right here on the CJEC YouTube channel. This is the only live reading of the California Reparations Task Force's final report on YouTube. The final report of the first in the nation California Reparations Task Force is one of, if not the most important government reports about the Black American community since the 1960s. Equally important, it's also the foundation for current and future reparations legislation in California. The report is nearly 1,100 pages long, and we're bringing you every page of it, chapter by chapter, every week on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so that you are properly educated for advocacy for reparations in California. Today's reading of the final report is presented to you as a community service with support from the Reparations Organizing and Mobilizing Team at the Coalition for Just and Equitable California-CJEC. CJEC is California's leading grassroots organization born for reparations and reparative justice for Black American freedmen living in California. For more info on CJEC and our work helping to enact the law that has created the California Reparations Task Force, California's law requiring state agencies to collect data on descendants of the U.S. slavery, the Act to End Current Slavery in California state prisons, the California Freedmen Affairs Bill, and more. Visit www.cjec-official.org.
Thank you, Mallory. I'll continue with our opening. My name is Marchand, and I am 12 years old. Before we go any further, right now, I need you to do 3 things. Like this video, hit the bell for reminders, subscribe to our YouTube channel. After we're done reading tonight, I need you to do 3 more things. Get connected, follow CJEC on all social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter/X, at CJEC Official. Get informed. Visit www.cjec-official.org and sign up for current and accurate California reparations news and info on our Get Involved page. Get involved. Support our work by volunteering and/or donating. To donate, just click the Donate tab on the home page of our website. Special thanks to our amazing fiscal sponsor, the California Black Women's Health Project. Learn more about them at www.cabwhp.org. The title of the chapter we're reading tonight is Chapter 32, Harm and Repair. You can follow along in the reading, download tonight's chapter, or the full final report yourself by going to our website, www.cjec-official.org reports. Okay, we're about ready to start our reading, but before we do, I have some special things and announcements to make. First, as always, I'd like to thank our good friends at ETM Media Group on YouTube for their live readings of the first California Reparations Report. You can watch their readings of the first report on their channel at ETM Media Group on YouTube and on our website at www.cjec-official.org videos. Second, for those of you who don't know, historic reparations legislation in California is here, and more is coming. SB 490 is California's first lineage based on reparations related legislation to establish the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency. The bill was introduced by State Senator Stephen Bradford and will move forward in 2024. To read the bill, visit www.cjec-official.org/advocacy. Third, as mentioned, more historic reparation bills are coming. Over the next several months, more reparations bills will be written. During the 2024 legislative session, we're seeing bills introduced and start moving toward passage by majorities of both the California State Assembly and Senate. To pass reparation bills in 2024, we need 41 Assembly members and 21 senators to say yes. When those bills are passed, we need our governor to sign the bills. So, to make reparations a reality in California, the math is 41 plus 21 plus 1. That's 41 Assembly members, 21 senators, and 1 governor. 41 plus 21 plus 1 equals reparations in California. Lastly, but not least, special thanks to CJEC's reparations organizing and mobilizing team, specifically our volunteer final report readers. And without further ado, Chapter 32 of the California Reparations Task Force final report.
Thank you, Mallory. Thank you, Marchand. My name is Tabitha, and I'm the daughter of Raphael and the mother of Marshall, Madisyn, Marchand, and Mallory. Chapter 32, Harm and Repair. Introduction. The task force engaged the Ralph J. Bunche Center at the University of California, Los Angeles to design and implement a plan in which it could facilitate the collection and documenting of important community perspectives independent of the formal meetings of the task force. The Bunche Center report, titled Harm and Repair, Community Engagement Project Report on Reparations in California, follows. The Bunche Center implemented its plan through holding community listening sessions and engaging with at least 867 people during 2022, collecting 7 oral histories and 46 testimonies, and administering 2 statewide surveys. The first survey comprised a representative sample of all Californians, with 2,499 respondents. The second sample, with 1,934 respondents, was over 90% African American and reached through connections to listening session participants. The fundamental goal of this work was to give the community voice in the ongoing statewide conversation concerning reparations, to create space for communities to express their concerns, their desires, their wishes, and their experiences, and to provide the task force and legislature with additional community input as it explored and deliberated reparations proposals. This chapter was prepared by the Ralph J. Bunche Center Community Engagement Project Research Team. Harm and Repair. Community Engagement Project Report on Reparations in California, submitted to the California Task Force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans, November 2022. Acknowledgements. The Bunche research team wishes to acknowledge and thank those individuals and organizations that either contributed to this report directly or supported the work undertaking to complete this report. First, we would like to extend appreciation to the 7 anchor organizations and their staffs. They help support the organization and facilitation of the listening sessions to ensure the community voice are considered during the task force's deliberations over reparation proposals. Their work was at the center of the success and impact of this project. California Black Power Network, Othering and Belonging Institute, African Black Coalition, Black Equity Collective, Black Equity Initiative, Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, Repaired Nations. We would also like to extend thanks to the many organizations and individuals who supported this project from facilitation to funding. They provided resources, time, and facilities, and they gave the community a voice as the task force pursues its purpose and mission. These individuals and organizations include Marv Lee Esquire, Ama Nyameki Anaya Good Influence, Lucid Holdings, Kelly Little Hernandez, Ralph J. Bunch Center for African American Studies at UCLA, Araya Florent Liberation Ventures, Christina Powell Liberation Ventures, Chroma Collaborative, the California Wellness Foundation, the Weingart Foundation, the California Department of Justice, staff of the Ralph J. Bunch Center for African American Studies at UCLA. Executive Summary. This report documents the findings of the Ralph J. Bunch Center's Community Engagement Project for the California Task Force to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans. This project was designed to collect and document important community perspectives obtained through three distinct means. 1. Holding community listening sessions. 2. Collecting oral histories and personal testimonies. And 3. Administering surveys. The fundamental goal of this work was to give the community voice in its ongoing statewide conversation concerning reparations, to create space for communities to express their concerns, desires, wishes, and experiences, and to provide the task force with additional community input as it explores and deliberates reparations proposals. Across the above means of engagement, the Bunch Center focused its data collection on 4 areas deemed important by the task force: identifying forms of race-based harm, gauging support for reparations, determining support for different types of reparations, and determining eligibility for reparations. Methodology. Between January and August 2022, 7 anchor organizations held 17 community listening sessions across the state of California. On average, each listening session had 51 participants, engaging 867 people over the entire project period. Personal testimonies and oral histories were also collected for this project. In all, 46 personal testimonies, including audio and video recordings, written documents, and photos, were self-submitted between May and September 2022. Additionally, 7 oral histories were collected via interviews conducted in August 2022 by the Bunch research team. The majority of the testimonials were provided by African American residents of California, and all the oral histories were provided by African American residents of California, ranging in the age from 38 to 88, sourced equally from Northern and Southern California. Finally, the Bunch Center designed and conducted a closed-ended statewide survey to assess sentiment on reparation measures such as direct cash payments and non-monetary forms of reparations, such as an apology or monuments. The survey recorded responses from 2 samples. The first was a representative sample of California with 2,499 respondents. The second sample, with 1,934 respondents, was over 90% African American, reached through connections to listening session participants. Key findings. An analysis of the results of the community listening session, personal testimonies, oral histories, and statewide survey revealed the following. There are 5 major types of racially driven harms that communities consistently identified. Study participants named lack of educational opportunity, discriminatory policing and law enforcement, economic disenfranchisement, housing inequality, and healthcare disparities most often when asked about racially driven harms that Black people experience. The participants also consistently cited the following harms: food inaccessibility, employment and workplace disparities, inadequate business support infrastructure, the cycle of municipal disinvestments in Black neighborhoods, and displacement. There is broad community support for reparations. The survey found that over 60% of Californians support some form of reparations, including financial compensation, community investments, educational opportunities, investments for Black businesses and organizations, and land and property ownership. Furthermore, community listening session participants overwhelmingly supported reparations initiatives. While a majority of Californians support reparation measures, they are divided on which types should be used. The survey queried respondents on specific forms of reparations to be applied and found that California residents are largely in support of three primary types of reparation measures: direct cash payments at 66% of the respondents, monetary reparations without cash measures, 77%, and non-monetary reparations, such as an apology or monuments. Support was consistently highest for the remedies incorporating monetary measures, but without direct cash payments, among all Californians, including Black participants. The community listening session produced a similar result, except that direct cash payments were more frequently mentioned as a form of reparations, followed by other non-monetary measures. There is a lack of consensus about who should be eligible for reparations. Community members consistently expressed concern regarding who would be eligible for reparations, generally divided into two camps: those who supported reparations based on lineage claims to ancestors enslaved in America, and those who supported reparations for all Black people, regardless of lineage. These findings provide information that's important for the task force as it continues to work on developing reparations proposals. They also provide an indicator of community sentiment, where awareness building and education may be necessary, and where continued community engagement will be required in the coming weeks and months.
Thank you, Mommy, Marchand, and Mallory. My name is Madisyn, and I am 12 years old. Section 1. Introduction and Background on the Reparations Task Force and its Charge. This report documents the findings of the Ralph J. Bunche Center's Community Engagement Project for the California Task Force to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans to task force. The Bunche Center's Community Engagement Project undertook the collection and documentation of important community information through three distinct means. 1. Holding community listening sessions. 2. Collecting oral histories and personal testimonies. And 3. Administering surveys. The overarching goal of this effort was to bring the voice of the community into the conversation about reparations, including community members' concerns, desires, wishes, and perspectives, and to provide the Reparations Task Force with further community input as it deliberates reparation proposals. More detail on the assessment's efforts and the resulting findings is below. Before proceeding, it is important to provide the following background information to clarify the purpose and historical importance of this effort. On September 30th, 2020, the California State Assembly Bill enacted Assembly Bill 3121, AB 3121, thereby establishing a task force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans. AB 3121 gave authorization to the California Department of Justice to provide administrative, technical, and legal assistance to the task force. This legislation is historically significant as it makes California the first state in the nation to formally examine the harms and consequences of slavery and potential remedies. The undertaking of the task force is important both in historical and contemporary terms. Slavery and its consequences are deeply woven into the history and development of the United States. From 1619 to 1865, constitutionally sanctioned slavery deprived more than 4 million Africans and their descendants of a range of rights and privileges, taking them from life, citizenship, cultural heritage, and economic opportunity. Following its legal abolition, government entities at the federal, state, and local levels continue to perpetuate, condone, and sometimes profit from practices that further harmed African Americans and reinforced their marginalized position in society. This legacy of slavery and racial discrimination resulted in debilitating economic, educational, and health hardships that were and continue to be uniquely experienced by African Americans. AB 3121 charges the Reparations Task Force with studying the institution of slavery and its lingering negative effects on living African Americans, including the descendants of persons enslaved in the United States. As part of this effort, the task force will identify, compile, and synthesize relevant evidence-based information on the institution of slavery as it existed within the United States. This includes how California laws and policies continue to disproportionately and negatively impact Americans, how they perpetuate the lingering material and psychological effects of slavery, and how those laws and policies can be eliminated. The task force's community engagement strategy. As part of this data collection effort, the task force elected to hold a series of community convening/listening sessions across California to obtain input regarding harms and potential remedies. To aid this effort, the task force relied on anchor organizations that had with deep roots, historical significance, and reach in the Black community to assist in the planning and delivery of the listening sessions. Such organizations were well placed to reach a representative share of the Black Californians thanks to the historically significant work they have done and are doing in communities, their reputation and trust, and their ability to deliver for community members. Figure 1 presents a schematic of the community engagement strategy that the task force pursued while collecting important information for its deliberations. Anchor organizations were tasked with organizing a series of community listening sessions to solicit community input and gather personal testimony on the harms and legacy of slavery to create a well-informed reparations proposals. The stated goal for the task force's community engagement strategy was to collect information on slavery and its consequences and potential remedies from a representative swath of the social fabric that makes up California. This included reaching people in different regions through different service provider organizations, including civil rights organizations, churches, and social service providers, people from different economic backgrounds or employment groups, such as Black farmers and organizers, policymakers, and otherwise active citizens who have been exploring and advocating for reparations. The Bunch Center's role in the community engagement strategy. To complement these efforts, on September 23, 2021, the task force selected the UCLA Ralph J. Bunch Center for African American Studies to serve as the intermediary organization supporting the efforts of the task force as it pursued its community engagement strategy. The Bunch Center provided an important neutral organization function. In this capacity, it helped solicit and identify key stakeholders to administrate and execute the task force efforts. This included the selection of the anchor organizations, who played a foundational role in this effort, as well as locating key personnel to convene this undertaking and organize, conduct, and facilitate the community listening sessions. As part of its efforts, the Bunch Center recorded and documented important information offered by participants in the community listening sessions. In addition, to complement the stories, ideas, narratives, opinions, and experiences of those who attended the community listening sessions. The Bunch Center also gathered information regarding the community's experiences, concerns, and opinions through 2 additional avenues. This was done through in-depth interviews and oral histories that were taken with a select number of participants from the community listening sessions. Analysis of personal testimony self-submitted to the task force was also conducted. Finally, a survey of public opinion was designed to collect opinions on reparation proposals from a representative share of the population of California, as well as from those who attended the community listening sessions. Together, these activities define the Bunch Center's Community Engagement Project to provide the task force with important information on the community's experiences, sentiments, ideas, and opinions concerning reparations that will aid its rehabilitation. The remainder of this report focuses on the findings of these engagement efforts. The next section focuses on findings from the community listening sessions, followed by an analysis of the in-depth interviews, oral histories, and personal testimony, and concludes with the presentation of results from the survey of public opinion on reparations proposals.
Thank you, everybody. Hi, I'm Marshall. I'm 17 years old, and I'll be reading Section 2, the Bunch Center's Community Engagement Project Design. As Figure 2 shows, the Bunch Center Community Engagement Project involved organizing and collecting data from 1. Community listening sessions led by anchor organizations involved in the Task Force Community Engagement Strategy, as described below. 2. Developing a semi-structured interview protocol and conducting in-depth interviews with a select number of individuals, as well as analyzing personal testimonies self-submitted to the task force. And 3. Developing and administering a closed-ended survey of public opinion on reparation proposals. Each of these activities was conducted independently of each other, but were nevertheless complementary. Discussions and interactions of the community listening sessions revealed key themes with respect to reparations. The in-depth interviews of participants of the listening sessions allowed for deeper understanding of themes related to reparations than would have been conveyed in the listening sessions. Furthermore, in the community listening sessions, in-depth interviews, and self-submitted personal testimonies, participants offered a number of remedies to address the harms from the legacy of slavery. These qualitative measures dovetailed with the closed-ended public opinion survey administered to Californians and to the participants in the community listening sessions to provide quantitative measures of individuals' opinions about whether, how, and to what extent reparations measures addressing harm should be supported. For each research activity, the Bunch Center focused on inquiry and data collection in 4 areas that were deemed essential by the task force. 1. The areas of harm. 2. The presence of support for reparations. 3. What type of reparations should be supported. And finally, 4. Who should be eligible for the reparations. In the sections that follow, each avenue of inquiry focuses attention on these categories, although the degree of attention to the various areas of concern is different across the activities. As noted, the analysis of the community listening sessions documented the discussions focused on each of the areas of concern, while in-depth interviews focused more on harm. The public opinion surveys collected opinion data regarding support for reparations by type with respect to eligibility exclusively. The Community Engagement Project Timeline. The Bunch Center Community Engagement Project began in January 2022 and extended through September 2022. The community listening sessions held by anchor organizations began in January 2022, with the final session held in August 2022. Each one of the sessions was recorded using either audio recording or via Zoom for sessions held virtually. The survey of public opinion on reparations proposal and eligibility was administered from the end of May 2022 to July 2022. The survey was conducted with a representative sample along race, age, and gender of 18-year-olds and older. A similar survey was administered to those who participated in community listening sessions. The respondents had the opportunity to fill out surveys from March 2022 to August 2022. Finally, in-depth interviews were conducted in August 2022, and personal testimonies were continuously self-submitted to the task force from February 2022 to August 2022. The community listening sessions. The community listening session process must be described before the findings of the report are presented. The key stakeholders in this process include the anchor organizations, the convener and the organization of the listening session project, and the professional facilitator of the listening sessions. For anchor organizations, for the listening sessions, 7 anchor organizations were invited to participate. Suggestions for anchor organizations were solicited from among task force members, thought state in the leaders, workers in philanthropy, and the landscape of organizations engaged in community organizing in Black communities across California. The final organizations were chosen for invitation to serve as anchor organizations based on the following criteria. 1. Organizations that are skilled in community outreach and community mobilization. 2. Organizations with deep roots in the Black community. Such organizations are well placed to reach a representative share of Black Californians because of their historically significant work that they do in communities, their reputation and trust, and their ability to deliver for community members. 3. Organizations with historical significance and reach within the Black community to assist with the planning of delivery of listening sessions. Reach of the organizations proved very important in that selection of anchor organizations. A high priority was set on the selection of organizations that were part of or leading broader networks that cut across issues of the region of the state. 4. Organizations that have reached with allied groups and organizations who must be educated about the task force and its mission, efforts, finding, and recommendations. 5. Organizations with a presence in multiple parts of the state. 6. Organizations engaged in a cross-section of social justice issues with diverse Black populations. The anchor organizations that help plan and facilitate the listening sessions include California Black Power Network. The California Black Power Network is a growing, united ecosystem of Black empowering grassroots organizations working together to change the life conditions of Black Californians by dismantling systematic and anti-Black racism. Othering and Belonging Institute. The Othering and Belonging Institute at UC Berkeley advances a groundbreaking approach to transforming structural marginalization and inequality. We are scholars, organizers, communicators, researchers, artists, and policymakers committed to building a world where all people belong. African Black Coalition. To liberate all African people through organizing intellectual and economic resources to transform the quality of African/Black lives. To ensure that African/Black lives people globally are equipped to build sustainable infrastructures to advance African Black people on a local, regional, and national level. Black Equity Collective. The Black Equity Collective's mission is to join funders and communities as partners in strengthening the long-term sustainability of Black-led and Black empowering organizations in Southern California. Black Equity Initiative, composed of Inland Empire organizations that share a desire to improve social conditions through empowerment, education, and policy change, guided by a deep commitment to the liberation and self-determination of Black people. This work advances our mission by helping us to deepen our influence and reach for educational equity throughout the region. Coalition for Just and Equitable California, a statewide grassroots coalition of California community-based organizations. The mission: achieve reparations and reparative justice for Black American descendants of U.S. slavery living in California. Repair Nations. The mission at Repair Nations is to educate, organize, and empower low-income Black youth in the Bay Area to launch cooperative enterprises for sustainable economic security through shared ownership and control of housing and businesses. Key personnel and characteristics of the Listening Session Project. The Bunch Center contracted with highly qualified experts to help facilitate the listening sessions. In particular, the center contracted with Mary Lee as a lead convener for the project, who has more than 30 years of experience as a public interest and civil rights attorney, community activist, and public policy advocate. She is an experienced educator, trainer, and project manager with a background in strategic planning and transformative system change. She has also served as a deputy director of the national organization working to advance racial and economic equity. In addition to being involved with the initial planning of this project with the anchor organizations, including how these groups would engage with members of the Black community, Mary Lee participated in brainstorming regarding the need for a survey and a portal to collect individual reflection stories and testimonies. Lee coordinated and convened 8 meetings with the community engagement stakeholders, including the anchor organization group meetings, and supported the facilitation of the community listening sessions, including serving as a breakout group facilitator at 2 listening sessions. Lee also tracked the progress of all community listening sessions and responded to all inquiries from the anchor organizations themselves, the task force, and the California Department of Justice. The Bunch Center contracted with Amma Nyameki Anani to professionally facilitate all community listening sessions held by the Anchor organizations. Anani is the founder of Good Influence Consulting, a black-owned boutique firm that helps organizations engage with and learn from their stakeholders, refine their strategies accordingly, and communicate more meaningfully. In this role, Good Influence partnered with the Anchor organizations to design the format, schedule, and manage logistics of the listening sessions. Some listening sessions focus on specific issues and communities, such as questions of health, housing, mass incarceration, education, the faith community, and the needs of Black rural, urban, and suburban communities. All participants were asked a set of open-ended questions, prompting them to share any harms related to slavery, as well as repairs, compensation, restitution, and do's and don'ts for structuring reparations. The sessions were designed to allow participants to share their voices uninterrupted for structuring reparations. This format enabled diverse stories, recommendations, and perspectives of community members to be heard. For larger group convenience, Good Influence trained facilitators to lead breakout rooms. Recognizing the mental and emotional weight carried in the listening session conversation, Good Influence worked with each Anchor organization to integrate wellness and inspiration practices throughout the process. For visual art, all produced by Black Californians. After a few sessions, the following quotation was also displayed at the start of each listening sessions, as it reflected a common sentiment we heard from many participants. There is more to blackness than our struggle. Angela Shante. Typical listening sessions, formats, and flows. Although no structure was mandated for facilitating community listening sessions, some elements proved universal at each session. Each session tended to begin with a welcome and introduction by a representative of the hosting Anchor organization, followed by a short educational segment providing a brief history of reparations and an introduction to the California Reparations Task Force. Following the introduction period, Anchor organizations typically had a local community leader give a speech or hold a panel on topics relevant to reparations and issues pertinent to the work of hosting Anchor organization. Following the community discussion, the hosting Anchor organizations allocated most of the allotted program time to record community testimonies, finally ending the listening session with a call to action. Key characteristics of community listening sessions. In total, 17 listening sessions were planned and hosted by the Anchor organization. Of these, 11 were in person and 6 were virtual. The in-person events were largely held in later project period in response to local public health decision to reduce restrictions on public events relative to changing pandemic conditions. On average, 51 people participate in each listening session, with a total of 867 participants over the project period. We cannot confirm that all 867 were unique participants, as we did not inquire about multiple session attendance. Thus, it is possible that one person or more may have attended 2 or more listening sessions. Nonetheless, the target audience for these listening sessions was diverse and comprehensive. During publicity for these events, extensive efforts were made by all partner organizations to ensure multi-generational participation ranging across socioeconomic groups. Further, in some cases, community testimonies were sought primarily from some of the most vulnerable communities in California, such as people who are unhoused, justice system impacted individuals, and Black women, to ensure inclusion of groups traditionally underrepresented. Anchor organizations exercise care and discernment while selecting the geographic locations of the event venues. Approximately 1/3 of the listening sessions were conducted virtually Zoom, and thus could be accessed by individuals across the state. The remainder of sessions occurred in person in geographic regions that possess larger concentration of Black communities in the state. This included areas within the San Francisco Bay Area, Southern California, and the Inland Empire. Specifically, sessions were held in Sacramento, Berkeley, Vallejo, Los Angeles, Riverside, and San Diego. The setting of these sessions primarily consisted of community centers, minority-owned businesses, and public parks. Anchor organizations representatives determined that these locations were more accessible to their target populations, and that local attendees would possess connection to their local community. Thus, it was anticipated that the attendees would express and contribute community-grounded perspectives and insights.
Thank you, family. I'm so proud to be reading Chapter 32 with you. This is Raphael Plunkett, and I will continue starting on page 910. Section 3, Community Listening Sessions, Analysis and Findings. This section reports findings from 17 community listening sessions regarding the major themes discussed at these events that fall into the following major categories of inquiry: harms experienced, types of reparations, support levels for different types of reparations, and eligibility. Methodology and data. At least one researcher on the Bunch team attended each virtual and in-person listening session hosted by each respective anchor organization. They provided logistical support, timekeeping, took observational notes, and ensured that each session was recorded, whether via Zoom for the virtual sessions or with a handheld recording device for the in-person sessions. All audio recordings went through a two-step transcription using both artificial intelligence software and a professional transcription service. First, the transcriptions were uploaded to Otter.ai, an online software program, to draft the preliminary transcripts. The preliminary transcripts were then uploaded to Adept Word Management Incorporated, a third-party professional transcription consulting company, to clean the transcripts up and ultimately ensure that the audio files were accurately documented. This generated over 1,000 total pages of transcripts from the 17 official listening sessions. The transcripts were analyzed and coded by two primary researchers using Atlas.ti, a web and desktop-based qualitative analysis software program to assist in the creation, organization, and analysis of codes within the transcribed data. Analysis. Researchers employed a qualitative approach to the analysis of the listening session data, applying a two-pronged framework for the thematic content analysis to meticulously identify and assess prevalent themes. Using a hybrid of deductive and inductive analytical techniques, a code book was derived that highlighted key themes relative to our four primary areas of inquiry: harm types, reparation types, eligibility, and support levels. By first applying an inductive framework of analysis, the researchers were able to identify primary themes emerging within each of the four primary categories. The themes for the four areas of inquiry that emerged from the first cycle of inductive coding were used to develop the initial code book of themes. From this foundation, researchers revisited each of the transcripts a second time, utilizing a deductive approach in a content analysis process. Using a deductive framework, researchers reviewed and assigned statements and responses within the listening session data to the code book themes. This form of content analysis prompted greater refinement and organization of the initial code book, while allowing for newer codes to emerge, which contributed to greater accuracy and validity of the themes identified within this section. This approach, in which content is dissected and parceled out, enabled the researchers to understand not only the types of themes prevalent within the data, but also their frequencies. The analysis centers the perspectives, experiences, and narratives of Black participants within the aims of the task force. As such, the researchers labeled and categorized their responses according to the primary categories that drive this study, and sought to report the direct insights obtained from Black Californians, quote, as is, end quote, at face value. Ultimately, the purpose of presenting and eliciting direct responses and statements from Black Californians was to highlight and acquire legitimacy for the real, everyday experiences of a group that is most often overlooked and undervalued within society. Research trustworthiness, validity, and reliability. To promote the utmost reliability and validity of the project process, researchers applied a two-pronged analysis, as noted previously, and implemented consistent peer review and discussion sessions. In the first phase of the listening session data analysis, researchers used a sample of the transcription data to code inductively or openly, allowing the voices of the participants to influence the creation of the codes and thereby to guide the identification of the corresponding themes. The next phase of the analysis involved deductive content analysis, which were applied to align content with each of the corresponding themes and fine-tune the code categories accordingly. These two phases of analysis allowed not only for the respondents' insights to guide integral themes found within the parameters of the 4 predetermined areas of inquiry, but also for greater insights to be garnered relative to trends or issues that emerged outside of these categories. Moreover, this two-step analysis cycle assured the validity and reliability of the interpretation and categorization of the findings. Further, the review cycle, undertaken to ensure the consistency and accuracy of the entire analysis, was multifold. In addition to applying a two-pronged method of analysis, the data collected was consistently coordinated with other members of the research team, who provided feedback on the coding of the themes as they emerged. Although the analysis of the listening session data was mainly performed by a subset of the research team, the other members of the team also regularly engaged in a continual and iterative process of weekly peer debriefing, review of code labeling, and revision of coded categories. The entire team of researchers periodically met over Zoom to produce consensus and coding categories and finalize the codebook that would be applied to all the transcripts, as well as reviewing and approving content labeled and assigned to each code category. Findings: emergent harms. The identification of harms and the discussion of remedies for such harms formed a majority of the listening session content. Participants and facilitators communicated their various stories and testimonies about harms caused by institutional racism and the legacies of slavery. Many participants were audibly emotional as they recounted their stories of loss, grief, and trauma. In every session, facilitators posed a correlative question to gauge the forms of harm and types of discrimination that Black listening session participants regularly experience within their everyday lives. Although the exact wording of the question was not fixed, the questions asked at the listening sessions were broadly comparable. Examples of such questions asked by facilitators include: to repair harm, we have to acknowledge harm. If you had to describe the 1 to 3 harms you would want reparations to acknowledge, what would they be? What are some of the harms that have happened to you, your family, and your community as a result of being Black? Figure 6 shows the top 5 most common themes that emerged in the community listening sessions in this order: 1. Education inequity. 2. Discriminatory policing and law enforcement. 3. Economic disenfranchisement. 4. Housing harms. And 5. Health care disparities. The instances of harm are discussed at greater length below. Educational inequity. Harms relating to educational inequity were the most frequently mentioned within the community listening sessions. Educational inequities include the lack of a supportive infrastructure that enables opportunities for Black students to thrive and prosper educationally. Education, considered the great equalizer among life circumstances, is thought to provide a pathway towards success and economic mobility. However, Black Americans exhibit the lowest educational attainment and completion rates of all groups, which prompts inquiry into the factors and circumstances that contribute to this disparity. Participants within the community listening sessions cited experiences of specific struggles and hardships faced exclusively by the Black community that contribute to disproportionate outcomes between Black students and their non-Black counterparts. Lack of Black instructors. One theme that emerged during the dialogue pertaining to Black children's educational struggles in K through 12 education and early childhood learning was the lack of Black teachers and instructors within the classroom. There were frequent references of this theme among listening session respondents, namely that their children encountered a lack of fundamental understanding at the hands of non-Black teachers. This lack of understanding, as one participant mentions, translates to the, quote, mistreatment of our black students, which causes a lapse in their ability to learn, end quote. Such mistreatment from both teachers and from school personnel was consistently voiced within the listening sessions. One parent noted that the lack of understanding that a teacher had for her son led to him being singled out and experiencing differential treatment by school personnel. Quote, the teacher tried to previously have him tested out of the class to be put in special ed because she simply didn't want him in the class. He wasn't a bad student. This all happened behind my back without any knowledge, without any parent consent. The principal knew about it. The entire staff knew about it. The special education department questioned it, but they really couldn't get anywhere with their questions, so the principal basically continued his stance on that, end quote. A few respondents mentioned that some teachers make black children feel defective and are responsible for pushing them out of the school system. Ultimately, these participants indicated that the lack of foundational understanding or even willingness to understand results in implicit bias against black students on the part of teachers and staff, thereby fostering an animosity or scrutiny that the child will internalize and that can greatly affect their ability to grasp concepts and learn on par with their peers. School to prison pipeline and over-criminalization of black boys. The implicit biases of school instructors and personnel relates to the emergent theme of over-criminalization of black boys in schools. Some listening session participants' responses directly demonstrated the widely known, quote, school to prison pipeline, end quote, that connects black children in schools to outcomes of carceral involvement. Specifically, these responses detailed the process whereby non-black school staff constructed alternative narratives of black boys, in which the boys were perceived and interpreted through a deficit-based lens. One participant shared their perspective about how black boys are, quote, being categorized because they're a student of color, and they're creating negative narratives for our black boys, which also seems to be the catalyst for them being forced into the prison system based on their quote-unquote perception of behavior or what they qualify as behaviors and things like that. Teachers misusing their position in order to push a narrative based on their particular structures that are put in place, end quote. Another story was conveyed, which details the extent that racial bias may contribute to not only the manner in which the school decides to intervene in conflict arising between two students, but also how racial prejudice can interfere with development and influence early involvement with the juvenile carceral system. Quote, my oldest, in the 2nd grade, there was an incident on the playground where a little girl ran into him on the playground. He was minding his business, playing, when the situation happened with this little girl running into him. They pushed to have him prosecuted as a 2nd grader, prosecuted for assault against this little girl, where the principal also went to the parents and encouraged them to have him prosecuted for assault because this little girl who ran into him suffered a bloody nose, end quote. Lack of culturally responsive curriculum. Another theme that was alluded to in several instances while discussing educational harms hindering black people referred to the lack of culturally responsive curriculum and pedagogical approaches. Respondents who spoke to this phenomena indicated the importance of feeling a sense of connection and belonging within the classroom. Although this can be achieved through a variety of channels, participants often mentioned the significance of being taught through an Afrocentric lens. One participant noted, quote, I think that's very important that we have real education and real history in the schools. Our children need to know what happened pre-colonization as it references to Africans. The lack of a high-quality and culturally relevant curriculum was also discussed by another participant, who concluded that the absence of such in a supportive curriculum is a primary reason why a larger subset of black youth are, quote, lost, end quote, and eventually become involved with the carceral system. Specifically, the participant detailed how those imprisoned are victims because, quote, they had nowhere to go, nowhere to express themselves. They didn't have the proper education to build their community, and they didn't know all the things that were coming up against them, all the things that were being put in front of them as hurdles. They fell over the hurdles, and they didn't realize what was happening to them was an organized effort to destroy them. End quote. As the participant conveys, it is the lack of a culturally inclusive and empowering curriculum for Black youth while coming of age that represents yet another way in which K through 12 schooling system marginalizes Black populations. Failing to connect and correlate lesson plans to the specific experiences and realities of students, namely students of color, can contribute negatively to their identity development. And this ends today's reading on page 914. We will continue in our next session on page 914 at Discriminatory Policing, Law Enforcement, and Criminalization. But for now, here is Mallory with our closing.
And that will conclude tonight's reading of Chapter 32 of the California Reparations Task Force's final report. Before you go, if you haven't done so already, don't forget to like this video, hit the bell for reminders, subscribe to our YouTube channel. When you go, don't forget to get connected, follow CJect on all social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter, X, @CJectOfficial. Get informed, visit www.cject-official.org and sign up for current and accurate California reparations news and info on our Get Involved page. Get involved. Support our work by volunteering and/or donating to donate. Just click on the Donate tab on the home page of our website. Special thanks to our amazing official sponsor, the California Black Women's Health Project. Thank you all so much for your time. I appreciate you all. My siblings and I are grateful to be a part of this space with our grandmother. We are closer to reparations than we have ever been in California. Have a great night.